Like to go ahead and get started. I know we've got some people still logging in and getting on board with us this evening. So we appreciate you attending. This is our second town hall of the week. And this town hall is really designed for middle and high school students. Elementary, we had more of an elementary focused town hall on Tuesday night. This one is really for middle and high school to get some information relative to the start of the school year as we are starting remotely for the first 10 weeks. So we're going to go ahead and put up our presentation, and we will go ahead and get started this evening. I do want to thank all of you who submitted questions. We asked for some questions in advance to help us to guide our presentations this evening, and we thank those of you who have done that. So we'll be going through some of those individual questions within the presentations that you will hear this evening, as well as some Q&A toward the end of the evening. If you would like to submit a question throughout the presentations this evening, you still can. We would ask that you email those questions. Those questions can be emailed to avondale.boe@avondaleschools.org. So again, questions this evening can be emailed to avondale.boe@avondaleschools.org. And we'll give several reminders of that email address throughout the evening this evening. So we welcome your questions. Your questions do help to help us in our planning. So we appreciate that. Know that there are questions that we're going to answer things as well as we can this evening. But please know that there are still a lot of plans that are under development. We have 4 subcommittees that are working to granularize many of the details as they relate to the start of the school year. And those, are under development. And as those become answered and known, we will be publicizing those, those answers. So unfortunately, at this point in time, we don't know everything there is to know about the start of the school year. And again, as those develop over the next couple of weeks, that information will be posted, as well as through meetings from the building principals and so on. So you'll also want to look at updates on our website. There is a return to learn icon on our avondaleschools.org website. Clicking on that will show a dashboard, and on that dashboard is all the latest of the details of our plans as we move forward, and that's continually updated. So again, if you access the website under the Return to Learn icon, a dashboard there will give the latest of information as we have it updated for you. So, and also look for meeting schedules and such from your individual building principals, because further information will be coming as well. So, but as I said, we're going to answer as much as we can this evening for what we have gleaned from the committees that have been working on the details. So with that, we have a slideshow that we'll have up for you, and we'll get going on that, and that will help guide our our information this evening. So for introduction purposes, we have with us in attendance, and they will be answering questions as well as doing some presentations this evening. We have Mrs. Colleen Brunei, who is our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction. Also in attendance tonight is Mrs. Marianne Monroe. She is our Assistant Superintendent for Student Services, who will be reviewing some of our special education information primarily with folks. We have Ms. Sharon Hyde. She is our Executive Director for Human Resources, which will be covering some staffing. And Mr. Dan Trudell, who is our Assistant Superintendent for Finance and Business. and he's been chairing one of our subcommittees, particularly around health and safety, and we'll be going through some of that information this evening. So those are our central office administrators that are on the seminar this evening. We're also joined by our high school principal, Mr. Doug Wilson, assistant principal, Mr. Jamie Brooks, middle school principal, Mr. Jason Ort, and Katie Gomez, our assistant principal at the middle school. So we are all in attendance tonight to assist with the questions as we go. So just a reminder with a town hall, which this is, a town hall is one where we disseminate information. So this is where we're giving out information, we're answering questions, providing some clarity, but this is not a decision-making meeting. This is not a subcommittee. So this isn't something where we're making decisions in this meeting tonight. This is simply disseminating information and answering questions. That's what the town hall is defined as. Keep in mind, we have a number of staff on the seminar this evening. And for staff, there will be information coming to them specifically from the respective administrators in their buildings. So this is not the only venue for staff to get information, certainly, but our middle school and high school staff will be getting information in further granularity from their building administrators as we go here. So this will just provide a general overview, but again, staff will be getting more specific information from their principals. And again, as you see on the screen, all updated information is available to the community with the Return to Learn dashboard that I had indicated a little earlier, which is continually updated. And that's a dashboard for community as well as staff. There are links for both in there to get the latest and greatest information, as well as resources to be used at home, in the classroom, and so on. And we're adding to that almost every hour. So, so please check out those that dashboard and those resources on our webpage. All right. So we have 4 subcommittees that'll be reporting tonight. And those 4 subcommittees comprise of many individuals. When I say many, we're talking almost a couple hundred individuals that are helping us to create the granularity of our planning as we're moving forward. We have a subcommittee that is focused on well-being, and that subcommittee is being chaired by our Assistant Superintendent for Student Services, Ms. Marianne Monroe. Subcommittee number 2 is Inclusion and Equity, and that is being chaired by Ms. Colleen Brunei. Subcommittee number 3 is Health and Safety, and that's chaired by Mr. Dan Trudell. And then subcommittee number 4, Human Resources and Staffing, is Ms. Sharon Hyde. So we're going to hear presentations from each of those subcommittees, which are comprised of teachers, staff, administrators, as well as many parents. So we're going to hear a little bit about where their work is at the moment. Again, keep in mind that their work is continuing. They are meeting quite often throughout the weeks here in preparation for the school year. So it is ongoing. And so we'll get the latest of updates from them this evening. So to start with, before we jump into the subcommittee presentations, I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about some of the overarching trend questions we're getting. And of course, one of the biggest questions is, why the decision to go remote for the first 10 weeks of the school year? Why did the district make that decision? And I can say that the district made that decision based on looking at all the indicators that we have that are going on right now in terms of levels of uncertainty as we start the school year. When we look at the resurgence of COVID cases in the county, and you may have seen reports on the news most recently that childhood cases of COVID are going up. That's a big concern, and that's a big concern for school districts. We took into account certainly the survey data that was had from our parents, We took into account survey data from our staff, really relative to the confidence level of their students attending in-seat instruction. And it has dropped dramatically from where those results were when we had surveyed folks back in June. And we look at what phase, the state is in. So currently we're in stage 4 of the 6 phases of the governor's reopening plan. But she continually threats, most recently, that we're going to go back to stage 3. And so we've got those looming threats that, we could be pulled back into 3. We also know that her latest executive orders put us in a phase where you can't have much more than 10 people in a room. Well, that makes it quite difficult to operate school when you've got those types of conditions with current executive orders. So, there's just a lot of uncertainty with starting the school year. And what we don't want to do is we don't want to start and stop and start and stop and have this pendulum of kids, starting in seat, then going remote, then coming back to in seat, then going remote. Frankly, we need time to gain confidence in having a sustained environment for our students. And that's why we, as well as many other and growing districts, are looking at giving that buffer of time. Many districts are doing the same as us in terms of the first 10 weeks, or even going the length of the first semester as a wait period to see. So, it's just really uncertain times. And we're trying to be cautious and conservative. I can defend being conservative when it comes to health and safety. When you're talking about health and safety, it's not a time to be talking about risk taking. So, we weren't, we're adopting that, health and safety is a priority, and for our staff, for our students, for everybody for this time period. Folks have asked, why not an A-B schedule? You hear some districts that are looking at where they have half the class for one day, and then the other half of the class the next day, and then they're remote for 3 days, and this combination of in-seat and remote. And really, that was a non-starter for us. We know that with the governor not requiring 6-foot distancing in classrooms, as required by as recommended by the CDC, was a move to not force districts to go to a schedule like an A-B schedule. An A-B schedule, regardless of whether it's an alternate day schedule with half the class, or it's an AM, PM where you've got half the class in the morning and half the class in the afternoon, and then remote periods. The bottom line is with that type of a schedule, what you're realizing is half the curriculum. At the end of the day, that's what your child's getting, is half the curriculum. And it's no more convenient for the parent to be half, a couple days in session, 3 days remote. And when you look at the amount of efforts and work that has to go into maintaining for the classroom teacher, doing simultaneously, teaching their seated students and then operating remotely with the other half of the students, you're putting in twice the output, or, in terms of efforts, and what you're gaining is half the curriculum in the end. And so these A-B schedules just are not conducive to a quality existence with instruction for the student or for the teacher. So, the A-B schedules were such that it really wasn't a starter. It was either for us, we're either all in or we're all out, because we want quality education and we want students to get the full gambit of the curriculum, whether that's in-seat or it's remote. So, so that's, where we ended up with the A-B conversations. Folks are asking about what's the criteria for coming back. So after the 10-week period, or in and around that time, what's going to be the determinant to come back? And, and we've got some folks are thinking it's going to be some specific indicator that when we get to a certain number of whatever, then we're coming back. It's not, and it's not like that. There is no single indicator that says, well, when a number gets to this, we're back. It's really much more multivariant than that. It's not like a wind chill snow day where if it's 20 below, you're out of school, and if you're under 20 below, you're in school. This COVID situation doesn't work like that. So as much as we'd like there to be a specific diagnostic and a number that says if you're this, you're in, if it's that, you're out, this has to do a lot with people's confidence. And so when it comes to evaluating coming back in November or thereafter, if it comes to that, is really looking at, what are recommendations at the time of the Oakland County Health Department. What are the county statistics? What are the childhood cases in the county? What does that look like at that point in time? Particularly what are the childhood cases of COVID in and around this area? We have to take a look at that as a variable. We're going to again survey the community for confidence. Where's the confidence of the community going to be, for whatever conditions exist toward the end of October, to see, where that lies. Teacher confidence. What's the teacher confidence level going to look like at the end of October, based on the conditions we're going to be in? What are area districts doing? Because we're close in conversation. I talk to the area superintendents, several times a week, and we're all talking about these same kinds of things in terms of evaluating the conditions in our area. And what's the state phase going to be? Is the governor ultimately going to pull us back as she's threatening into phase 3? I think we had 1,123 cases today, which, she's not happy about. And, she's going to make a press conference tomorrow. So, there's greater indications that she could be pulling us back, and force everybody to be remote. So there is no clear-cut diagnostic to coming back in November. It's going to be all these variables that we have to look at and weigh, just as they were in terms of coming into or making the decision to come to remote for the first 10 weeks of the year. We had to weigh all these types of things to make that decision, and we'll weigh them again at that point in time. Questions about, do parents have choice of in-seat or continued online after the first 10 weeks? And the answer to that is yes. Parents will have a choice, because we know we will have many parents who will opt, even if we're coming back in seat in November, to keep their child remote. And we want to afford the opportunity for parents to have that choice, to continue to go remote, should they so want to at that point in time. But what we can't guarantee is that you would keep your same teacher at that point in time, because we know that when folks are coming back to in-seat, there's going to be teachers assigned to the in-seat students, and there's going to be teachers assigned to those who still want to remain remote. So not knowing what those numbers are going to be, we can't necessarily guarantee that who your child starts a course with at the beginning of the year will be that same teacher come November, depending on what your choice is in terms of either coming back in seat or going remote. We'll have a better picture of that when we know what the desires of people are going to be at that point in time. But sitting here today, I can tell you that I can't guarantee that you'll have the same teacher in November, just to be frank and transparent. So that, in terms of returning to in-seat, will your child have the same teachers they had in remote? Again, no guarantees. We're certainly going to make that our goal. But as staffing goes, we just don't know at this point that we can guarantee that. So that gives you a little bit of background in terms of some of the decision-making that we've had to this point that's put us into this remote mode. What we want to jump into now is we're going to jump into each of the 4 committees that have been working on the granularity and the details with our middle school and high school. And again, I want to make sure that you're aware of, as you have questions, you would email them to avondale.boe@avondaleschools.org. That's avondale.boe@avondaleschools.org. And so with that, we're going to begin to turn the program over to our subcommittees. And then following the presentations of the subcommittees, we will get into specific questions and answers from those that have submitted questions. So let's start with our first subcommittee on inclusion and equity, and that is Ms. Colleen Bruni, and we will go ahead and turn it over to her for those updates.
Thank you, Dr. Schwartz, and good evening, families and staff. My name is Colleen Bruni. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction. I am chairing the Inclusion and Equity Committee. Our committee is focused on curriculum and instruction, as well as the scheduling and technology resources, our technology access, testing and assessment, calendars, procedures, all the things that go into teaching and learning. Our committee is working on. So the first thing that we have been focused on has been student and teacher daily schedules. We're looking to make sure that they align to our curriculum standards, and we're looking to also make sure that they mimic a school day at the secondary level. So when we look at our at trying to create continuity of learning, we are not only thinking about as students get linked in and follow through remote learning, but we also have to look forward to when they return to seated instruction, so that we miss a beat when that happens. So if we could go ahead and click on the next slide. As you can see here, we have the elementary, middle school, and high school daily schedules. I'll go over elementary briefly before I get into middle and high. Elementary, we are mimicking a school day. We will start when a typical bell starts at 8:32 a.m. and will continue till 3:39 p.m. Gate, they will start at 8 a.m. and move through the day until 3:01 p.m. This is what it would look like if we were seated. However, if you're thinking they're going to be in front of screens all day, that isn't the case. We are very, very conscious of our students, not only at the elementary level, but all levels, that we need to limit screen time and make sure that we are changing things up quite often to get them moving and make sure that they're not just in front of a screen all day. So as you see the words synchronous and asynchronous, synchronous means that we are doing what we're doing now, where we can do live lessons, we are giving live feedback, and this happens in what we call a synchronous fashion. And we're aiming to get about 40% of our class or our day in this manner. Asynchronous is when students may either log off and do independent work, or they may be doing some work that is on their own time, or maybe silent reading, something along those lines. So something on their own where we're not doing this live instruction is asynchronous. Very similar to what we might consider classwork or homework. That's what our asynchronous work might look like. So again, we're trying to mimic our school days so that as we move into seated instruction, that continuity of learning is stable and we're able to make that transition without bumps in the road. So I'm going to move on to middle school. The middle school is going to be running block classes. So we are going to start at the typical middle school time. That's 7:53 a.m. to 2:46 p.m. Gate, of course, is at 8 a.m. till 3:01. And we are going to follow a block schedule, which means half of the classes will be one day, half of the classes will be a next day. So that is in order for us when we do return to seated instruction to offer less mingling and less cleaning between classes, or less opportunities where we have to clean between classes. So the idea is to cohort our kids and group them. But we at the secondary level have to be conscious of curriculum, and we have to be conscious of coursework. So we don't want to limit what kids are allowed to take. And we've got several students that, that may have even singleton classes. So we want to make sure that they get those specialized classes when they need them. Again, at the middle school, we're going to be looking at appropriate screen time, developmentally appropriate, and we are conscious at every level regarding that. Moving on to high school, the high school is going to follow the typical bell schedule of 7:22 to 2:22, and same as what we had for middle school. We're running half the classes each day. There's block scheduling, so we've got a couple of renditions of middle school and high school scheduling to look at. The Equity and Inclusion Subcommittee is looking at schedules and advising our administrative team on how we might do what we can for kids, but also follow all of these criteria and guidelines that we must in order to give them the coursework that they need. In high school, I know that some of our students are in that specialized coursework, and they may be leaving campus typically to go to OTEC or early college, dual enrollment. We've been working with those entities. Most are going remote as well, and we should be able to schedule those without any issue, thanks to the cooperation of those other entities. I do want to take a minute to explain that we have to abide by pupil accounting rules. These are a set of rules that say that our students have to be in class a certain amount of days, and we also have to provide a certain amount of instructional hours. Therefore, the bell schedules are very important. Those bookends of starting and ending school are going to be very important this year, which is why we didn't shift our start and end dates. We want to make sure that we have all of our T's crossed and our I's dotted so that we are following our state compliance when it comes to pupil accounting. So students will see their teachers in a remote sense, but we are pushing forward with all the great things that we do in classrooms and getting very creative so that we build those relationships and we have synchronous time or live face-to-face time with our kids every day in this kind of this setting, like what we're doing today with you. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Our committee also, and in my department, we are looking at how do we make sure that our students stay connected. We have these resources listed on our technology page that is connected to that dashboard that Dr. Schwartz had referenced at the beginning of this presentation. So these are all available to you. The resources for the internet access are going to be updated periodically as we continue to get more and more information from either companies or other organizations that help to get students connected. So if you could click on the Avondale Remote Connections page, let's take a look at that real quick. So Avondale Remote Learning Connections has many places where parents and families can go to get either technology support or look into purchasing devices. We are going to distribute devices for borrowing. That will happen on Wednesday, August 26th, Thursday, August 27th, and Monday, August 31st. We will be updating that if there are any changes, if we add any dates. If those are not dates where families can make it, we will make sure that we connect with those families and get students access to technology. It is our aim to make sure that every student has a working device. We do not suggest cell phones. Cell phones typically do not do the job. So we are asking that we have screens that can show our Zoom meetings or can be shared so that we can do collaborative work. And phones really don't seem to be working for our students. It's something that we've learned through spring and through summer learning. So we continue to add more devices to our inventory. It is something that our technology department and our business office continue to collaborate with my department on daily. We can go ahead and click out of here. So again, here are those distribution dates. We will start with one per family, and then as we add to our inventory, we will be prioritizing families with either multiple children or conflicts in schedules so that we can get more than one device out to families and continue to add, like I said, to our inventory. And let's go ahead and click to the next. So here is what many middle and high school parents want to know about. I know that I've had questions also regarding this from staff as well. In the spring, we were forgiven our state testing. Our M-STEP testing was canceled and was not rescheduled. So that was testing for grades 3 through 8. We also had our College Board testing, which was PSAT and SAT testing, that was postponed and told we were to reschedule. However, that did not happen throughout the summer. As we all know, everything continued to get rescheduled and pushed on down the road. This here is a table that can show you if your student was in 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th grade in 2020. These are my high school families. You are now scheduled to take your College Board assessments, which are PSAT and SAT, this fall. So the 9th grade will take the 8-9 test. The 10th grade will take the PSAT along with the 11th grade. And we're really focused on those 12th graders because this is the SAT, what we've all been practicing for. And it even 12th grade or 11th graders last year who may have tried a private setting were most likely rescheduled if they didn't get in before COVID shut everything down. So this is a very important work that we are planning at the high school level. But our other state testing, all the Michigan state 3 through 8 testing, is tentatively still planned for spring of 2021. And we also do some local testing, and WEA testing is something that we do in the fall and the winter, and then again in the spring. This is testing that can help us see how kids are growing. Can also be used, there are reports that teachers use to help form, to help drive their instruction. We call that formative assessment. So although it will summarize their growth, we can also use it formatively, and we can drive instruction using that testing. So we are going to be piloting NWEA testing in our summer programs, and it will all be remote, and it's typically an online test, but it will be delivered remotely. Next week, we are piloting it. So this is going to happen for all of our students in early fall and midwinter, and then again in the spring. So no matter what setting we're in, we will continue to do that testing. If you could please click on Avondale Assessments at a Glance. So this is a calendar of the testing that typically happens in our school district. The district benchmark testing, as I said earlier, formative drives our instruction, summative measures our growth. So we're looking at those purple lines for our district benchmark testing, and that's our NWEA that I was just describing. You can also see down below, those of you who may have entering kindergartners, we did not screen kindergartners this year. We're going to be using formative assessment to make sure that we meet the children where they're at and we move them along. So there are testing sessions that have been canceled at a local level. The kindergarten MKEO, which is a new test that our county is kind of the last to adopt. We're in a group of a couple of counties that have waited till this year. We didn't know it was going to be this kind of year to adopt it. The rest of the state has been doing it for a while. So that is a tentative test there, that yellow kindergarten MKEO test. But all the testing in the green is still ready to go, and we will be administering those tests, and that is a tentative schedule unless the state comes in and tells us otherwise. You can see that the state WIDA testing, which is for our English language learners, and our spring state testing, they're those thick blue lines, they're still scheduled to go as well. And we were able to complete AP exams last year remotely. So if your child is an AP student, please know that that can still happen even if we are in a remote situation, which I hope by spring we are not. And that should summarize testing. I do want to say that there are a few things that are not represented in the slides, but I know are questions that people have asked. Will our students have the ability to continue with all of their programming? Yes, we will make sure that your students get the coursework that they need. Another question that we receive is, will our students be graded? And yes, we will be grading students and taking attendance. In fact, I said earlier, I mentioned pupil accounting. There are rules around attendance and grading that can make sure that we are accounting for our students and reporting that to the state. So this is, like Dr. Schwartz said, very different from our emergency shutdown that happened in the spring. And we are heading into something that looks a lot more like regular school as we move into the fall. And that should do it for my presentation. Thank you. There's my contact. If you would like to email me or give my office a call, please do. I am pretty quick about getting emails back. Sometimes when voicemails are left, it takes a little longer because I'm not always in my office, but I will get back to you pretty quickly. If you have any questions, please email. Thank you.
All righty. Thank you, Ms. Brunei. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. My sound keeps going in and out, I can see. So just making sure you can hear me. So, so again, as you have questions regarding the, well, I say any questions regarding presentations or anything therein, again, avondale.boe@avondaleschools.org. If you just email us those questions, email or avondale.boe@avondaleschools.org. So yeah, as Mrs. Brunei had indicated, that this is not the same experience with remote that you had back in the spring. This is an entirely differently designed remote experience. This is one that, you know, the governor is not saying doesn't count like she did back in the spring. The accountability is much different. That there are grades. This is going to be true online. This is synchronous and asynchronous teaching, so there will be live connections of class, and it is surrounding the bookends of the school day, as which was illustrated to you earlier. So, so the components of this remote learning are far greater than the emergency situations that we found ourselves in last spring. So, so with that, we will move to our next presentation from our second subcommittee on well-being, and we will turn it over to Mrs. Mary Ann Monroe.
Good evening. Can I get a thumbs up if you can hear my voice? Awesome. I see a lot of familiar faces. Middle school, look at those smiles. Middle school and high school families. I get to serve as the Assistant Superintendent for Student Services and the Chair of the Wellbeing Committee. This evening, I get to update you on our electronic registration for Avondale schools, our Wellbeing Subcommittee report. I know this is our secondary team, but I will be updating you on our early learning programming options. And then I get to share with you an update for our special education services. So are you a brand new family to Avondale School District? If so, you can contact Mrs. Lita Brennan at 248-537-6039 for our enrollment process. So that's for families that are not enrolled yet, have just moved into the district and need to be welcomed by our Avondale family. For those brand new to district, we will be offering a welcome to Avondale process hosted by our building principals, a coffee with the principal for new families. So welcome aboard. Are you a returning family? Well, welcome back. So whether you're a Mustang or a Yellow Jacket, we are so excited that you continue to be part of the Avondale School District family. We are proud to announce that we have opened up an online back to school packet for our annual registration. Families, you received those today, and thank you for the feedback. Many of you have already registered using your mobile devices or your computers. And in the email that you received today, there is a tutorial, both a video tutorial and a mobile screenshot that will help guide you through. If you need any help at all, if you need your PIN or your password, I want you to contact Mrs. Kristen Ritchie at avondaleschools.org. You can also contact my office at any time. Any of your building level offices can also assist you. But I want you to hear that if you need access to a device, please contact your child's school and we will set up a time for you to use our computer lab or Chromebook to complete registration. This is critical information. You get to complete your emergency contact and all of the essential information for returning families and students.
So this used to be paper copies of the manila folder that everybody would get that first day of school, where your child would come home and give you this packet and there'd be, 100 forms to fill out with the emergency card and the acceptable use policies, all of those things. We have now put that all into this portal so that it all can be completed online. So that's where we need all the families to go into this registration process. It's basically the same things you filled out in paper form before. Now it's just electronic and much easier for us to categorize and organize since it's electronic. So we appreciate your attention to that when you're able to get to it.
Thank you, Dr. Schwartz. The Wellbeing Subcommittee is a committee that is part of our district improvement team. We are fortunate in the Avondale School District because we have made so much progress and growth in the area of social and emotional well-being for our students and families. At the same time, we are in very unique circumstances as we transition back to school in the current situation with COVID-19. There are students, families, and staff that may have new or existing needs that have come up. And part of the requirements of a return to learn plan is that each school have what's called a universal screener. Another word for that is a survey that we check in on the well-being of 100% of our students to assess the student needs and be able to celebrate growth. Students will be supported through virtual counseling, virtual social work, and intervention services. We are excited to be able to coordinate those efforts, both from a pre-K all the way to 12th grade or our post-high program. Avondale Schools is also offering an optional Avondale Family Wellbeing Check. It will be accessible to all families via email, but also on our website at any time after the start of school. This will give confidential feedback related to the overall health, social emotional needs, and community resources that a family may need during this critical time. And we also are offering a staff well-being check. This is an optional and confidential staff well-being check that will be provided to all Avondale staff. Paired with this, employees will have access to complimentary and confidential counseling supports. Our Early Learning Center is growing. The current reality for Early Learning Center, while we are as a state in stage 3, and while Avondale School District is in a remote learning classroom situation, the current reality is that there are families that are in need of in-person supports for their little ones, care and learning, and there are families that prefer virtual supports. So as a school district, we have the opportunity to meet both of those needs. Our early learning enrollments for summer currently has 17 children, and that enrollment is lower than normal due to some families returning to their home country due to COVID-19. Working conditions change in the summer, and some families still want to or prefer to be home rather than in an education or community setting with 10 or more people. The Early Learning Center for enrollment for fall is at 36 tuition. Children are currently enrolled in the Early Learning Center. We have learning centers set up for small group so that we're meeting that 9 or less students with 1 adult. In our Early Learning Center, we actually have a higher ratio. There's more adults to the smaller group of students. And then 27 out of 32 of our Great Start Readiness Program slots are filled with new applications coming in weekly. Today, I actually think that we may have reached capacity at some of those, so we're exploring other options. Special education services. Our students during remote learning all will receive instruction and targeted support virtually aligned to their individual goals and objectives as outlined in current IEPs. This is critical. 100% of our students, general education and students who receive supports through 504 or an IEP, will receive instruction from their teacher of record or caseload teacher support. However, we also have students that are in categorical classroom programs. These are our students that are in general education less than 40% of the time. And Avondale School District will be offering an optional for face-to-face support with safety protocols 2 days a week, starting the first week of school. The families that are eligible for this will be receiving an online registration letter from me, and that will open up on Monday, August 16th. The supports for this will include transportation. Our categorical classrooms will have weekly paper-based lessons, and there will be support services for functional, social, and academic skills. Again, a categorical classroom is for our students who are receiving special education support 60% of the time or more, or again, in general education, less than 40% of the time. At Auburn Elementary, we get to welcome the support of an administrator, support staff, and access to school safety personnel. During those first 10 weeks when Avondale School District is in remote learning, Auburn Elementary will be home to face-to-face with safety protocols for our Busy Bee 4-year-old program, Early Learning Center, which is a tuition-based program, our Great Start Readiness program, and this will occur 5 days a week with fee-based enrollment and parent-provided transportation. Deerfield and Woodland will welcome an administrator, support staff, access to school safety personnel, and will have face-to-face with safety protocols for our early childhood special education, K-5 basic classroom supports. This will occur 2 days a week, small group. Times are yet to be determined based on our in-district transportation that we will be providing, and there will be a lunch service. That brings us to Meadows Learning Center. Again, Meadows will have access to administrators, support staff, and school safety personnel. At Meadows Learning Center, there will be face-to-face with safety protocols for our Busy Bee 5-year to 12-year-old program, 5 days a week with fee-based enrollment, access to remote learning support, and parent-provided transportation. Meadows continues with additional programming, face-to-face with safety protocols for our post-high students. Those are our students who are ages 18 to 26 in our special education adult transition program. We are looking forward to being able to offering small group instruction 2 days a week with safety protocols Times are yet to be determined based on our in-district transportation that will be provided, as well as lunch service. Then we get to home of the Mustangs, Avondale Middle School. An administrator, support staff, and access to school safety personnel will be available for our face-to-face safety protocols for grades 6 through 8, basic classroom students. Again, those are students that are in special education, 60% or more of their day. We look forward to welcoming small groups 2 days a week, times to be determined based on our in-district transportation that's provided, with lunch service. And home of the Yellow Jackets, Avondale High School, we will be able to have the support of an administrator, support staff, and access to school safety personnel. At Avondale High School, we get to welcome those face-to-face with safety protocols for our grades 9 through 12, basic classroom supports, 2 days a week. Times, again, are determined based on our transportation that will be provided for in-district students and a lunch service. My contact information, Marianne Monroe. Please email or call. I welcome questions and feedback. It will continue to help our partnership and make us better so that we can serve all of the Avondale students, families, and staff. I look forward to supporting you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Monroe. We appreciate your presentation. Again, folks that are joining us, just a reminder, you can email questions. Again, that address is avondale.boe@avondaleschools.org. All right, moving to our third subcommittee presentation on health and safety, Mr. Dan Judell.
Thank you, Dr. Schwartz, and thank you to everybody that are on this call this evening. We're going to touch a little bit on the health and safety of returning to school, as well as staff returning to their classrooms in the coming weeks for their remote learning. I know this kind of has taken a backseat to perhaps the virtual learning aspects of returning to school, but nonetheless, it's still important, and we kind of want to give everybody a sense of what we're going to experience when we do return, hopefully later this fall, to in-person instruction. So last week, the Oakland County Health Department released their formal guidelines with all the requirements and recommendations for the health and safety of returning to in-person instruction. So tonight we're going to just touch on a few different areas relating to the prevention, the monitoring, and the reporting of COVID-19. So as I mentioned, although we're going virtual for the first 10 weeks, we will still use these guidelines as of today and then throughout the school year. So we're looking for anybody that will be in the buildings at any point there to follow these guidelines. And then another note is these guidelines do relate to when we are in phase 4, and should we move into phase 5, these guidelines may change a little bit from requirements to strongly recommended or recommended. So looking at the prevention aspect, starting with social distancing, the district has ordered signage that will be used throughout the buildings. We have various different signs, stop signs for the main offices that would indicate that you have to have a face covering, floor decals for social distancing reminders, wall decals for the bathrooms where we could ensure that people have the proper hygiene habits for washing their hands and stopping the spread of COVID-19 or any other bacteria or virus for that matter. Student seating in the classrooms, everything is recommended to be in one direction. So we would have to adjust in the coming weeks all of the classrooms in preparation for students returning. So we would have to look at ensuring that all desks are facing one direction, and for the classrooms that do not have desks, we would have to look at ensuring that the students are able to maintain their social distancing within the classroom at those tables. The County Health Department is also recommending students in cohorts when possible. This will help isolate students from other students that may be infected. So in scheduling the students, if they were to return later this fall, we would look at making sure that they're in specific cohorts at all levels to the extent possible, which would then allow us to help with contact tracing when we work with the County Health Department, and then isolating those students that either are infected or would have been exposed to a possible positive infection. Lunch period, there are different recommendations from the County Health Department. looking at eating in the cafeteria so long as you can maintain social distancing versus eating in the classroom. And the district, in partnership with our food service company, we would have plans ready to go for both options. At that point, we would just have to assess the feasibility, and then just using a determination of how many students are choosing the in-person option versus virtual option, that may factor into whether or not we go into the cafeteria or in the classroom. And then kind of jumping off of that, students in the cafeterias, they would not be required to wear a face covering. So that's kind of why we have to focus on maintaining that social distancing in a cafeteria when students are eating, because they would not have a face covering on at that point. Jumping into face coverings, all students K through 12 will be required to wear a face covering at all times during phase 4. This would include in the classrooms, on any buses, or in the hallways. So from the moment that they enter the building, they would have to wear a face covering as well as on the bus. That was something that our subcommittees really discussed, and the state recommendation and the county recommendation was K through 5 would not need to wear them in a classroom, but they would have to wear them on a bus or in a hallway. The subcommittees, I believe, felt that it would be better for everybody to wear them in the classrooms at all times. So that's the direction the district is looking to go regarding face coverings during the school day. There would be exceptions for students with special needs. So any student with a special need that, for any reason cannot wear a face mask, they would not be required to do so. And then as well as students that have a condition that would be defined by the CDC as a condition that would prevent them from wearing a face covering. And then, as I mentioned before, while eating lunch, students would not be required to wear one, or with any other physical activity in a physical education course. Provided they can maintain their social distancing, they would not have to wear one as well. The district is looking to provide 2 cloth face coverings to all students and staff. The intent of this is to purchase those cloth face coverings for all students and staff, just to ensure that they do have some, and then they would be able to rotate those cloth face coverings, just to make sure they're disinfecting them on a nightly basis. This would allow them the opportunity to not have to be washing and scrambling every night, just to be able to switch between the two. We would also have disposable face coverings on hand. The district does have around 50,000 ordered at this point in our possession. About 10,000 of those are child-sized masks. So if a student forgets their face covering for that day, if they lost it or whatever the case may be, we would have those on hand for them, as well as for any visitors that would be entering the building and did not have a face covering. We would have those ready to go. And then at the same time, even though we are providing face coverings, students would be encouraged to bring their own, for any reason, if the one we provide doesn't fit properly, or if it's just, something that they prefer their own versus ours, that's up to them to decide. And then depending on availability in the market, we've been looking around, and there's quite a few options out there right now. We're looking to purchase a breakaway lanyard that could help secure masks to students, especially the younger ones in elementary levels. This would just allow them to hook their mask around them just like an ID tag. And then that would just ensure that they're not dropping them on the floor, and that they would maintain possession of those and wouldn't be at risk of losing them. Moving on to hygiene, as I mentioned, there will be signs throughout all of the bathrooms, and those signs would just be a friendly reminder of the proper protocols that you should have with respect to washing your hands and maintaining that hygiene. Throughout the district this summer, we did have our a company we use to go around for all the mechanical maintenance. They check all of the sinks to ensure that they're all functioning properly. So that is being done currently, and we're ensuring that any rooms that have a sink in it would have enough soap available, and any rooms that do not have a sink installed at this point, we would be ensuring that they would have access to hand sanitizer, just to ensure that every room throughout the district would have those proper protocols in place and the available tools and materials needed to do that. Deep cleaning on all buildings on a daily basis. That is something that we have communicated with our janitorial company, just in regards to what protocols do we want to follow and how often do we want to be cleaning. So we're looking, even with going virtual, we're going to have the cleaning staff here as we normally would. Obviously, they would have a little bit less to do, maybe in the cafeteria or in the hallways, but their focus is going to be on, for the staff that are in the building at that time, how can they ensure that the buildings are up to the standards that we're looking for going forward. And then as students look to return in the fall, we would work with them to add additional staff that would help clean in the evenings after school is out, and then as well as on the weekends to do further deep cleaning throughout the building. So those are discussions we've already had, and we're making the necessary plans over the coming weeks for when we return shortly in the fall. Two products that we're going to use that we currently have quite a few in stock at this point is a surface protectant and a general disinfectant. So the surface protectant is a product called Surface Guard 90. And what it is it's a long-lasting biostatic surface protectant. And this product is EPA registered. It is water-based, it's colorless and odorless, and it's very safe. And what it does is it creates a surface protectant on anything that we spray it on. So we may spray it on a door handle, you could spray it on a door, a wall, a desk, on the buses. So when a child or a student is entering that bus, it's essentially creating a barrier that would prevent any type of microbe or bacteria or anything that would stick to that surface. It would prevent it from sticking to the surface. And there's different residuals on that, anywhere from 30 to 90 days, depending on how frequently touched that surface is. So the goal of the district is to ensure that we're spraying the sensitive areas every 30 days, which would add an extra layer of protection to fight against the spread of the virus. Now, looking at the general disinfectant that we would be using, it's called Virostat. This is a disinfectant that we've long been using in the district, and it is a gentle disinfectant that we would be using on a daily basis and would not have an effect on that Surface Guard 90. So it wouldn't remove the added surface protectant that we would have. And it is an EPA registered product, and it is certified to kill the COVID-19 virus. So that's something that we would kind of work in tandem with each other, that, we're trying to protect just the surface in general to the extent that we can, but at the same time ensuring that on a day-to-day basis, we're also disinfecting these surfaces. So jumping into monitoring, just looking at the health screenings, I know this was a fairly big topic within the subcommittee as to, what are we going to do to monitor students coming in and out of the building, as well as staff or visitors. So starting with the staff, the CDC, the state and local health departments recommend that the district does screen staff coming in and out of the buildings. Now, a health screening would really be some sort of checklist, which we've been using since the springtime. And that checklist would go through a series of questions regarding, places you may have traveled, if you have a fever, any other symptoms you may have, and then you're signing in and out of the building, with your name, date, time, things of that nature. So we would be doing that for all staff and all visitors coming into the buildings. Now, temperature checks are strongly recommended by the Oakland County Health Department and the CDC and the state health departments. And so from the subcommittee work that we've done, that seems to be the consensus that we should be doing temperature checks on all staff coming into the building. So we do have around 40 touchless thermometers in stock right now, and those will be dispersed throughout the district. And then as needed, we'll add more if we need to. Jumping into students, the CDC, the state health department, and the local county health department all have recommended that districts do not do a daily screening of students as they enter the building. They felt that this would be too much of a disruption to the learning process, and getting 3,500 students in on a daily basis every morning, finding adequate amount of staff to help screen students coming in, it would just be too much of a task to handle every morning. So they do not recommend that we do that. And their solution is to essentially hand out a waiver to every parent saying that that parent would be responsible for screening their child before sending them off on the bus or into the school building. So there would be a series of questions on that waiver that a parent could look to use every morning It doesn't take a lot of time. It's just a simple check of their child every morning just to ensure that they don't have a fever and that they don't have any symptoms. And then at that point, that student would enter the bus or the building. Some of the concerns we had with the district doing the screening of students is if a parent were to drop their child off at the bus stop and then we take their temperature and they have a fever and that parent is gone, now we would have to ensure that we get that child back into or back with the parent and home safely. So that's where the logic comes from the health departments, just recommending that parents help with this as well, just to ensure that nobody is entering our buildings with symptoms. And then at the bottom there, we do have 3 nurses that will be provided by the Oakland County Health Department. We just got a little bit more information on those nurses, but in the next week or 2, we expect to hear more just about how that relationship will develop between the nursing staff that'll be sent here and then how we would collaborate with the Oakland County Health Department. So that is something that I know a lot of people on the subcommittee had questions regarding, who will be handling a student if they were to be quarantined in a building, what kind of information would the nurses be providing and how would they be dispersed throughout the district. So the subcommittees will continue to meet on that, and then hopefully we will start to finalize our protocols with the nursing staff. So jumping into reporting, this is the protocols that we were waiting for most from the county that we received late last week, just regarding positive cases or close contacts. So just looking at, first, if someone has COVID-19 symptoms, whether you're a staff or a student, you would immediately be excluded from all school activities. So if those symptoms were to arise during school, that staff member or that student would be isolated in a designated quarantine room with a mask on. That staff member obviously would be sent home provided they have transportation, and then the student would be in that quarantine room with a mask on until a parent or guardian does arrive to take them home. And then at that point, you'd be asked to contact your healthcare provider, at which point they would guide you with how to get tested and what protocol to follow. If you do have a positive test result, that staff member or student would, and all household members would be excluded, as I noted above, from all school activities. And then we would require them to be isolated at home for 10 days from when the first symptom appeared. And then 24 hours have passed with no fever and without taking any kind of medication to reduce that fever. And then once the symptoms have improved, you would be able to return to school. Household members of that individual who did test positive, they would have to self-isolate for 14 days. Now, our subcommittee work did address this issue of 24 hours versus 72 hours. The CDC originally had recommended that an individual that tested positive would stay home until 72 hours have passed with no fever and without taking any medication to reduce that fever. They have since changed that on July 20th to 24 hours. Our subcommittee felt that it would be better to still enact that 72-hour threshold. So it seems to be that that's the direction we're looking at going with respect to fevers. And then the isolation of 10 days since the first symptom, again, that was something the CDC had adjusted. It was originally 14 days, but now they have lowered it for a positive case result to 10 days. So again, that's something that there was some concern that 10 days wasn't enough on our end, and that was kind of the baseline recommendation. So as our subcommittees meet further, that may be something that we tweak to the 14 days as well. And then anybody that would have been exposed to somebody with COVID-19 that tested positive, those individuals would self-isolate for 14 days. So there was some discrepancy between the 10 days for a positive case versus 14 days for somebody who was only exposed to it. And the CDC reason for that is somebody who wasn't diagnosed positive with COVID-19, there's an incubation period generally of a few days, 3 to 5 days, where they would not be testing positive yet. So that's why they jumped it to the 14 days for somebody who's only been exposed to it. And then looking at somebody, if they test negative, that staff member or student would then have to be symptom-free for 24 hours after the negative test result before returning to school. And then, as I noted before, if a staff member or if a student has had close contact with somebody with a positive COVID-19 case, then they would be self-isolating for 14 days. And then there was questions, I know, on the subcommittees about household members and how would that work, just in determining whether or not that individual would be allowed back, should they have been exposed to somebody who did test positive. So if there is a household member of a student within the school that has had COVID-19 tested positive for, then that student who lives in that same household as the person who tested positive would be excluded from all school activities for 14 days. A household member of a student within the school that is symptomatic, or if they're pending, test results and they've had close contact with somebody that has had COVID-19, those members would be allowed to go to school while they're awaiting those test results, or I'm sorry, they would be excluded from school as they await those test results. So, and then if those test results are positive, then they would go into isolation for 14 days. And then another question we had arise on our subcommittee was about close contact and what does close contact actually mean? And something that the Oakland County Health Department, they did define it, and it's a person who was within 6 feet of an affected person with COVID-19 for more than 15 minutes with or without a mask on. So that could be a caregiver, it could be somebody sharing a living space, or someone who has had physical contact with them, whether it was touching them or hugging or kissing them, and then anyone who may have shared, food or beverage utensils with them. People may also have had close contacts if they were somehow exposed to those droplets from an infected person, such as a sneeze or a cough. So if there is a positive case, that is something that it would be a collaboration of the district, the nurses within the district, and then the county health department, who would have a point contact for us, and they would help initiate the tracing process, and then letting those individuals know who may have been a close contact, what the protocol will be for them should that happen. So that's the general gist of what we've been exploring as a subcommittee. These plans will continue to evolve and the protocols will be more finalized. We'll have flow charts available. That way everything is very clear cut for all the buildings and the staff and students as they return. So this is my contact information. Feel free to email me if you have any questions or concerns. I generally respond very quickly to emails, as Colleen said for herself. So thank you everybody for being a part of this town hall. And if you do have any further questions, as Dr. Shore stated, just feel free to email them in and we'll hopefully be able to answer them for you. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Trudell. Again, our email address for questions is avondale.boe@avondaleschools.org. So please send in your questions as you have them. Our fourth and final presentation from our subcommittees is our Human Resources and Staffing Subcommittee, and that is Mrs. Sharon Hyde.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? So thank you so much for being here. I see many of my subcommittee members, and I appreciate your involvement, and thank you for all of our parents that are present tonight, because you are helping us to build the best program that we possibly can for your students. So as we begin tonight, I wanted to share some information based on some of the questions that we have received. In regard to the Michigan High School Athletic Association, the MHSAA, as of today, we will follow the guidelines and continue to follow the guidelines, so our sports will continue. I wanted to share the safety precautions that we have in place to make sure that we are keeping all of our athletes safe. Our athletic teams are playing outside. They are being segregated by different sports. They are practicing in pods. Each of our athletes is bringing water with them, their own water, a face mask, and they're being provided hand sanitizer. Because this is an after-school activity, they are expected to answer the screening questions that are provided by the Oakland Health Department. Our teams are starting at staggered start times, and their temperature is taken prior to all workouts. So we are following all safety precautions. We hope that athletics will continue, but we, again, are going to continue to follow the guidelines that are provided by the Michigan High School Athletic Association. We've also received some questions in regards to clubs and extracurricular activities. At the middle school and the elementary level, we will be having clubs this year, but those clubs will be delayed just for the first 10 weeks so that we can make sure that our students focus on routines and get back into the structure of learning. At the high school level, we will start our clubs immediately, and our teachers will be volunteering to assist for those clubs as well as extracurricular activities. So as far as clubs for this year, which is different than in past years, there will be a $50 fee for all students for all clubs that you want to participate in during the entire year, as we are in a remote setting. And then if a student receives a reduced lunch, the fee will be $25 for the entire school year. And if the student receives free lunches, the fee is only $10 for the entire year. And as far as our clubs, they will take place virtually, or the teacher could select to facilitate those face-to-face, but we will follow the executive orders, and the students would be working in groups of less than 10, and they would follow the social distancing guidelines, meaning they would wear the masks and keep their 6 feet distance from each other. So again, we're allowing our teachers the option to facilitate those clubs either virtually or face-to-face. And that will go the same for our extracurricular activities, items such as robotics or the Avondale Theater Company. They will be able to practice in groups of less than 10 as long as we are following the social distance guidelines by our executive orders. The next item I just wanted to reinforce is that after our initial 10 weeks of remote learning, we will continue to look at all of the data and all of the different variables that are out there. And when our Board of Education makes the decision to allow us to return for face-to-face learning, it is our goal to offer face-to-face learning as well as virtual learning. It is an extremely fluid situation, so I cannot guarantee that your child would have the same teacher, although we will continue to work for as much consistency as possible. But as you know, some of our teachers might select to meet the needs of our students face-to-face or virtually, so it will be based on our parent requests for their child. Just as far as next steps, I just wanted to let you know that I have a meeting scheduled on Monday, August 15th. I'll be working with the Avondale Association of Teachers and their leadership as we begin to prioritize those teachers that would be teaching either face-to-face or virtual once we are able to offer both options. And then our subcommittee for human resources and staffing, I will be setting up a meeting in the near future with you as more information becomes available so that I can continue to get your updates and get feedback from you to feed to our district committee. So again, I thank you greatly for your involvement, and I thank you for your participation this evening. My contact information is listed here, my email, as well as my phone number. You are welcome to reach out to me at any point, and I will respond to you promptly. So again, thank you for being here this evening.
All righty. Thank you, Mrs. Hyde. Appreciate that, that update. Again, questions, avondale.boe@avondaleschools.org. What we're going to do now is turn to some of the questions that folks have sent in prior, as well as some that are coming in now. And so I will get started with some of these specific questions. And we have a variety of folks, as I mentioned earlier, online with us from our various departments and schools that will assist in answering these questions. So let me move to the first question. The first question is, how are we handling Move Up 504 meetings? I think, Mary Ann, that one would be yours. Is she muted?
Mary Ann, you need to unmute yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you so much, Doug. So any 504 move-ups that did not occur in the spring will occur with our counseling team. When we return to school, we will review the current plans and then make sure that we convene virtually with necessary families and students to accommodate any learning plans.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Next question is, regarding absences, the school typically regards a pretty strict absence policy. If after 10 weeks, students come back to school and test positive for COVID, is there any leniency regarding absences regarding the climate, the current climate? So, so in other words, is there a deviation in the absence policy because of a student who may test positive for COVID?
You want me to address that?
Sure.
So typically, if there is medical documentation of issues that occur, those go in as documented in our system, and they do not count against the attendance count for truancy. So we document those pieces, and we just keep that information for ourselves, and that does not go forward to any kind of issues with truancy.
All right, next question. It says, both of our children have been accepted into NJHS, that's the National Junior Honor Society, the middle school. Will they still be able to participate in the organization? And if so, how will volunteer hours be handled?
So I can help out with this. I want also to welcome Mr. Ort. Mr. Ort, you want to wave? That's our new middle school principal. NJHS will still continue. We have two advisors, Mrs. Nuffs and Ms. Pedersen. They will determine whether or not virtual events will occur. The service hours, again, will be determined. What service hours can be accepted during virtual times will be determined by Ms. Pedersen and Mrs. Nuffs. We cannot have any larger groups than 9 students to 1 adult. So I would ask that you stay tuned. It is right now mid-August, and usually our NJHS, I know, will kick up and get into gear and then have our induction normally in November. It is our intent for all programming to be able to continue those traditional events, but we will have to be creative in how we can convene and support families and celebrations. But NJHS is a cornerstone of great service at Avondale Middle School, and we intend to get creative to make sure that we can continue it.
I just wanted to share some information regarding the high school as far as our experience last year. Dr. Charleston Lyons and Mr. Baker were extremely creative in continuing the organization as far as the volunteer hours. Much of that was done remotely, in which our students could support other students remotely. So I'm sure that it will continue.
Thank you. Similarly, with a middle school question about electives, will students still have the opportunity to select electives at the middle school?
So I will, Mr. Ort, you want to jump in?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Ms. Monroe, stay on in case I speak out. I'm still a rookie. I'm going to play that rookie card right now.
Awesome.
Yes, the students are receiving a full schedule. The specials teachers are still going to be engaged in teaching lessons. I already have meetings set up with one specials teacher to work on creativity and how we're going to engage students in those specials. But I have had some talks with our specials teachers. They are gearing up for these next 10 weeks. So we're absolutely going to keep that. We're absolutely going to continue with that. And hopefully we'll be able to transition to a face-to-face down the road smoothly. So yeah, rest assured, full schedules are still going to be adhered to.
So Mr. Ort, I don't know if you know, would you happen to know how choir is going to be instructed online? That's our next question.
I laugh at that. I'm a son of a band director and a choir director. So if my mom was on here right now, she would just be taking diligent notes on how I answer this. Coming from Fraser, very strong music program, they got creative with doing some virtual rehearsals. It's difficult via Zoom sometimes to get harmonies going, but I don't want to speak for our music teachers or choir or band. That's in fact one of the people I'm actually meeting with. In fact, tomorrow, I believe so. And there's ways to assess. The hard part is to get an entire band or an ensemble to assess via Zoom. So this again is going to be something that we're going to have to be creative on. Don't be surprised if you see me take a couple courses with your kids in music. So
I'd like to add too that a point of pride that we have continued to be able to celebrate in Avondale is that grade 6-12 continuum of music instruction. And I want to just share with our parents that we share, we want to name and kind of share the disappointment in our inability to convene and have those statewide competitions and performances that Avondale continues to celebrate and grow in. But I also trust the expertise of our music department and our administration to support whatever creative solutions that we can come up with. The only good news when I think about festivals, all the exciting things that students gear up towards, is that all of our middle school and high school programs in Oakland County will be in the same boat as far as how can we refine and respect the talents of our students and grow those skills in creative ways. So that tradition of excellence in music is something that we are dedicated to, and supporting our music teachers to continue to support our kids is not lost on us.
I will add to that Kevin Cornwell, who is our choir teacher at the high school and is shared over at the middle school, is meeting with Mike Sheldon, who runs our theater at the high school, and they are investigating technologies that will help our choir teachers and our choir kids be able to bridge that gap. And they've got some technologies that they are investigating right now. I just had a conversation with Mike a couple hours ago.
My mouse isn't working on my mute. Am I unmuted? Really? Really? Because it's still showing. All right.
Dr. Schwartz, we can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me. Good. Yeah. It shows that I'm muted, so I don't know what's going on with my computer here, but sorry about that. Continuing on with the questions. So next question is what would be the current expected return to class date? Right now, we're targeting out through November 6th. That puts us through that 10-week mark.
Dr. Schwartz, you're muted again.
Now you are muted.
Muted?
Now I can hear you.
You are unmuted now.
All right. So November 6th puts us at that 10-week mark. So we would be looking at returning to school just following that. And again, the indicators by which we would make that decision, I had spoken to toward the beginning of the seminar this evening, with a number of variables of looking at trend data of cases, particularly childhood cases in and around the area, and what state phase we're in, what the survey results of the confidence of the community is at that point, teacher confidence at that point. Again, so, a number of variables to determine that. So, and those would be conducted toward the middle of October in preparation for that date. Question about, will class assignments and schedules be posted daily or weekly?
So I know Mrs. Brunei is going to speak to the schedule component. Dr. Schwartz, are you saying class schedules like the student schedule?
So class assignments and schedules. So I'm looking at, I guess,
Okay,
yeah, class assignments and schedules. Are they posted daily or weekly is the question.
thank you.
So because we're moving to a synchronous and asynchronous blend of classroom instruction, that means that daily we will have attendance and daily we will have class assignments. So there may be things that students are projects that students are working on, just like we were in a regular classroom, projects that they're working on all along. And some assignments that they may say are due at the end of the week or that are due in 2 weeks. And there will be assignments that they do daily live with teachers in the classroom. So we are not posting assignments at the beginning of the week and saying you have all week to do them unless that is a common teacher practice if they were in a seated situation. So we're going back to what seems like a regular classroom regimen with definitely screen breaks. So where students do independent work, but we have some live teaching with teachers. I hope that makes some sense.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Brunei, on the same topic though, could you, I know you mentioned it earlier, but expand on the Google Classroom platform for consistency?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the past, we went into an emergency situation in the spring, and there were teachers that had online classrooms, and there were some that had not. Most teachers at the secondary level did have an online classroom, and they may have already established it in Google Classroom, but there were also other platforms that teachers may have been using. We have, as a district, decided that Google Classroom will be our doorway for every single class. So whether a teacher uses this or they may use Seesaw, there are some other classroom platforms. In order to get to those, you'll still have to go through a Google Classroom doorway, basically. So the feedback we got from the spring was that parents and students and even staff were asking for more consistency. And it's a lot easier for a parent to see all of the classrooms on one screen and be able to click in. It's also a lot easier for students. So if you can imagine opening up your screen and seeing each of your child's 6 or 7 classes represented on one screen in one format, you can click through that doorway and then open up to the Google Classroom.
Great, thank you. This is a question, I think, for Mr. Wilson. When students do return back to school in seat, will the freshmen have a chance to walk their schedule and get acquainted with the school?
Absolutely. So all of our freshmen are in a high school transition class, and they are matched up with mentors that are juniors and seniors in the building. And in a traditional year, they would actually be walking through all of that and walking through the building and getting used to where they're going and finding their lockers and all those great things with their mentor on the days of registration. That's not going to happen right now, but the plan would be is once we get back into the building, we will continue those relationships that they will build virtually right now, and they will be able to walk the building and walk the schedule and get acquainted with what the building has.
Great, thank you.
Dr. Shore, if I could just piggyback off that.
Sure.
For the incoming 6th graders, that's something that the middle school is going to mirror as well as what the high school is doing. We had to put Camp Success on hold. It was not canceled. We are just postponing that until we are safe to return to school. And, you know, at that time, it may open up a little bit for students that wish to walk the building before they enter their first day as a student. So the middle school also is mirroring what the high school is doing for our new Mustangs.
Great, thank you, Jason. Thank you. Well, I guess here we go with a middle school question, and that is it known whether the middle school students at GATE, at our gifted and talented school, will be able to participate in the classes that are shared with AMS, such as band, foreign language, algebra? So will those opportunities still be available to the GATE students?
Of course, they will. We do have, for our gifted and talented program, we're able to partner in those content areas as well as in Spanish this year. It is the intent of Mrs. Martin and Mr. Orton and I to continue to support that learning opportunity. Earlier today, we talked about curriculum options and course requests. So, you know, students request their courses back in the spring, February, March, April. And we always tell families and students to think of it like a hotel reservation or like a movie ticket. So you reserved your seat, and it's our job to keep that seat for you. So we are working hard to make sure that the student learning options are not interrupted and students are able to stay on track with their course selections. Every student is unique. So whether you are a GATE student or a traditional middle school or high school student, those course selections are so important, and they align to something called your educational development plan. And I know the students on the call are going to say, Mrs. Monroe, you're so boring, but the teachers on the call or the parents on the call know that we want small, successful steps leading up to all the way to high school graduation. So we are building some successful adults who can be independent, and that starts with your course selections all the way back in 6th grade.
And the follow-up question to that is regarding sports and clubs. So would GATE students also have the opportunity to take advantage of middle school sports and clubs as they relate to the rules under this remote learning?
So historically, the GATE program runs its own extracurricular activities. However, the middle school does welcome the GATE program into any of our student activities. The only guideline is just any partnership that we have is that there either be a teacher or administrator or volunteer for chaperone purposes, because when we are working together, sometimes if we don't know all of the students, we got to make sure that we're looking out for safety and support any success. So things like activity nights, attending events, GATE students are welcome. We just have to have that partnership of support for supervision. And Mrs. Martin does run club and activities at GATE separate than the middle school.
Thank you. Next question. For students that are not performing as well as they necessarily would because they're online, how is their grading managed? So in other words, like, who's checking in on them? How are they engaged, motivated? I think that's what the question is getting at.
So the first thing that we are do is utilize teachers and our support staff to make sure that students are connected, that they have the appropriate equipment and access, and make sure that we connect also with the families to see if there are any supports that they might need. And then if it is purely an academic and situation where we might need to intervene with our interventions that we have scheduled at either the middle school or the high school level, we will be able to do that. So our support staff is still going to be working with our students. They may be working in smaller groups. They also may be working in classrooms with classroom teachers to provide supports for our students. We've been working at this in the summer with our summer programs. So this summer we have been pulling small groups of students and targeting for specific skills and trying to push them along and accelerate them in their learning. So we are learning quite a bit. Summer school ends on August 20th. And we, like I said earlier, we are piloting our NWEA testing so that we can help see how that goes in this new way of distributing learning and assessment. So we'll continue to support the kids and assess them for anything that might be needed as far as targeted instruction.
Ms. Brunei, if you don't mind me adding to that,
Please do.
This is going to be a partnership between the teachers and the parents. As if you're noticing your student is struggling, falling behind, don't be afraid to reach out. Some of the tools that I know the high school and middle school are working on together are a who's who page where you can look for academic, social, emotional support. Through this time, we anticipate some students having some difficult times, but as parents, we really need you to be in contact with us, help us to help your student, because sometimes students have a hard time advocating for themselves. That's where we need your voice for them. So please reach out to us.
Thank you. Question asking about what does a typical middle school day look like as students come back?
So in person or remote? I'm going to make my joke. Here's the thing. Middle school, it's noisy and smelly. But if we're remote, right? We don't, Mrs. Gomez, you know I'm right. I saw you smiling. So a typical day, Mrs. Brunei has that schedule, and I don't know if you want to revisit that screen or talk about that bell schedule. But a typical day is you're learning your core content area and your electives. We're looking for that synchronous, so that real life interaction, two-way communication, and then some asynchronous activities. Mrs. Brunei, I believe you had the standard start times is what I don't know it by heart anymore, 7:46 to 2, yeah?
I don't know it by heart either, but yes, standard start and end times. Those bookends won't change no matter what setting we're in.
So I think the question is, are they engaged that entire time?
Good question. And no, we have built-in transition times, just like we would if we were switching classes. Kids will be switching classes and they will be switching teachers. So they may click on one Google Classroom and begin their day and then log out, have a little bit of a break, and then go into another. There's also lunch that is scheduled just like it would be. And there are going to be times during that class where they log off and they do some asynchronous independent work. So that is the goal, is to make sure that we are engaging with our kids, that we are building those relationships, we are completing that feedback loop and making sure that our kids are getting the attention that they need, but also we need to grow their independence as well. And there needs to be some downtime from those screens. So if we're talking about a remote situation, that's what it'll look like. When we get back into seats, they're going to have longer blocks of time in their class, and they will have less switching of classes. And that's by design, so that we have time to clean the desks in between. And also we don't expose as many kids to as many other kids, and we keep them cohorted a little bit better, all while maintaining the coursework and curriculum that they deserve.
One of the things we will continue to honor is the tradition and celebrations through our character development program in our advisory. That will be a constant, and it really is needed more now than ever before when we talk about well-being, relationships, consistent routines. So that will still be alive and well, whether we are remote or when we get back to seated.
And the follow-up to that is, what does a typical high school day look like online when folks return?
Online, I mean, as we go through the remote process here over the next 10 weeks, we'll be finalizing the schedule on Monday, but it will be a block time period. We are communicating with our teachers on how we are going to most effectively use the longer time periods. We may be looking at working on some flipped opportunities where there would be teachers would share in the responsibilities of creating a video that the students would be able to watch during the class. Typically, we're talking about at the end of the class as they give them an opportunity to prep for the next class that they're going to come to in 2 days. That way, when they're coming into the classroom and they already have an exposure and experience with the learning materials that they're looking at, and then the teacher can actually engage with them through experiential learning. So it's not going to be lecturing at them when they walk into class or when they log into class, I should say. And then built-in breaks where they'll offer them opportunities to go into break rooms or shut the screen off and potentially work on something real world in their own house, and then be able to come back and debrief about it and then lead that into the next lesson.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. All right, moving into the next question is, what's to happen with sixth graders who have not received any orientation or transition to the middle school?
I mentioned previously before that we were with the Camp Success. We're not canceling, we are postponing it until we get closer to the time we can safely return. But because of this situation, we are probably going to have to beef that Camp Success up to allow our incoming sixth graders that opportunity to go through the, where's my locker, where's my classroom, where's the lunchroom, just that basic orientation, those basic needs as you walk in there. So we are going to have something in place for all of our students and our families, all dependent on what our restrictions are at that time, of course. But when we go face to face, we will have something prepared so those kids have a fair shot at gaining some comfort, entering the school.
All right, thank you. Next question. What will the district do for families that do not have adequate internet?
So we have a list of providers. So depending on the company that would service your area, they're, AT&T or Verizon or whoever it may be. There was a list that came out in the spring where the internet providers had worked out special deals with families, and we're continuing to update that list. We also have other avenues to help support our families. And if there's any family that is struggling with internet, they can contact my department or our technology department, and we will help to support that family.
So I know we were looking at hotspots and things of that nature that could be applicable in those situations where a family is really stranded without internet. So those are opportunities that we would avail essentially on a case-by-case basis for those families that really need it. I think a question for both middle school and high school is, when will the exact schedules be made available to families? Like, what time is first hour, what time is second hour? When will families know their child's schedule?
Jason, you want to talk about that, or do you want me to?
Go ahead, we're in the same meeting together.
So we are making that, when I say we, there's a subcommittee and a group of individuals that are making that decision on Monday. And as soon as we have that information, we will be sending that out. It'll either come from each of our buildings or it'll come from the district. But we are making that decision early next week so that we can let not you guys know, but our teachers know as well, and we can start planning for what that's going to look like.
All right, thank you. Question about absences. So how will absences be dealt with for classes missed, and will children be able to catch up?
Go ahead, Jason. You hesitated first before you talk.
Yeah, I thought my screen was frozen. Mr. Wilson commented before, obviously with doctor's notes, we're going to be very, very responsive to students with health issues. But just as before this pandemic happened, when you have a student that's out for an extended period of time, especially for medical purposes, there's always going to be a time that we used to do day for a day. So if you're out for 5 days, we're going to give you 5 days to make up that time. And I think in this, there's just some common good sense that we will use as buildings saying, this kid was sick. We're going to need to extend the time. And I don't see staff having a hard time with that. Hopefully that answered the question, but Doug, if you want to add to that, please feel free.
Yeah, I think the one piece that I would add to that is our hope as we start to be creative and develop our lessons and develop our collaboration tools that we are going to be able to create opportunities where lessons are, like I said, flipped, recorded prior to that, so that our kids that may miss a day are still able to go and watch a lesson that is there and then be able to come back and dialogue with the teacher in real time. We won't be recording the Zoom sessions themselves, which is why you keep hearing me talk about flipped lessons and that kind of decisions in the class. So we are looking at creative ways. We know that our kids are going to be out sometimes, our teachers are going to be out sometimes. And so we just want to make sure that we cover all of our bases and allow our kids a great continuous education.
Thank you. Question, will there be transportation provided to get students to clubs and sports that are still planned on happening? And I can say from transportation for providing for clubs or sports, that's something that we can look at. I know logistically that gets difficult because we still have some clubs that'll be virtual, some clubs that are on site, and sometimes it's a mix. It may be virtual for some time, it may be in person sometime. So that's going to be difficult to logistically navigate around, but that is something that that could be looked at. But again, the logistics on that are going to be fairly difficult. Question about lunch, is Chartwell's still going to be able to provide children lunch for those that qualify, particularly for free and reduced lunch? And is that something that we're still going to avail to students?
Yep. So we did get the guidance from the state, and that will still be an offering that we will do. Likely it'll be operating as we did since the springtime and over summer, where we'll designate certain buildings for pickup. But the difference being between the spring and the summer program versus what it would be in the fall is the fall would be treated the same way any ordinary school day would be treated, where you have your free and reduced students or paid students. And we would have to identify those as they come up to pick up the food from whatever building we designate, and then we would be recording it at that time. Versus the summer program that USDA and the state had partnered together for was more of a free program for everybody at that time, just because it was an emergency scenario. So the same rules would apply. It's just the delivery of that food, virtually with students being at home. We would have pickup options available just as we normally would in any given school day.
Thank you. Thank you. Question about, is there going to be a day scheduled for families to pick up supplies that are needed, like art supplies, music instruments, books, workbooks, sheets, those kinds of things?
So for the high school, and I think Jason may echo this as well, we were talking about this earlier today. We have a staff meeting on Monday because we are still not in the contracted time where our teachers are reporting. It is a voluntary meeting. However, most of our staff members show up, and we are generating a list of what our needs are for our kids, whether they're books, whether they're art supplies, and we are going to put together a schedule once we get all that information, which will probably occur during the first week of school, as we are getting everything underway, and we are running out of time before school starts. And we will then do a massive distribution with our teachers' help. That will include last year's yearbooks or supplies for arts, the books that they may be picking out for different classes if they're going to use those. And so that is a plan that the high school is going to do.
So I can jump into the well-being committee is working really hard to coordinate just a general school supply list for remote learning. It's a new type of learning, so we want to try to support families, and Gift of Giving has been kind enough to begin to partner with us to support families in need, as well as any other Avondale families that, you know, we might just be in a tough time because of COVID. We're experiencing a lot of changes economically, and we really, one of the things that Avondale School District does so well is we support community. So we are thankful to Gift of Giving to start to do that work. Our well-being subcommittee met late last night, and today, even as I sit here, I'm getting updates from that committee on draft of school supply lists. The elementary principals, who I think you guys will see in a video for registration, if you haven't seen it already, they are also coordinating elementary pickup. Here's the reality, is that throughout the time of remote learning, we will strive to make sure that we are equipping our students with what they need. I'm gonna give the example of Mr. Ort. He might not have found it yet, but at the middle school, there's a drawer and we have calculators, and they're under lock and key because they're for M-STEP and they're for PSAT. But you know what else they're for? They're for our kids right now. They need calculators, we've got calculators. So it might take some logistics, but we're gonna get those items in your hands.
Thank you. So next question is, will there be a dress code for remote learning?
Mrs. Gomez, are you on?
I'm here.
All right, you wanna talk about our little etiquette, our draft etiquette that we created back in June? Do you remember?
We are working. I remember sort of, I need to refresh a little bit, but we are going to be coming up with shared norms for our Zoom meetings and for our other, for any kind of in-person meeting. So at the middle school level, I can say that it will be some shared norms about what we're expecting from students as far as being engaged, and that might include we're still working on it with our staff to come up and to redraft and relook at the norms that we came up with in the springtime. But we want to have expectations of etiquette that are shared amongst all the students so that we know. And we do want to take into consideration, we'll teach kids, you can see in my background, I have, I'm actually at Dumbledore's office at Hogwarts. So you can see that in the background. But with teaching some kids how to utilize some of those tools so that they feel more comfortable to be in person on video conferencing and whatnot. So instead of asking the question of, are we going to force kids to have their videos turned on, asking more of the question of how can we create a climate and how can we create a classroom setting where kids feel comfortable turning their videos on and being engaged with what we're learning. So sort of rephrasing that question to be more inclusive.
And parents, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, uncle, aunt, whoever's on the Zoom, think about, we want to create a safe learning environment even on screen. And so, yes, we want some appropriate shirts at least, right? Let's start our day strong. Let's get ready for a great day. That means we're going to get up, get dressed, and do our best. And we will be the first to just politely or kindly ask a student to maybe make a different dress choice, and we will support you with that, with any counseling or administration support that you need. But just like you on this video, you want to make sure that we're appropriate, and we want kids to be able to focus on the learning, just like I'm sure you do.
And as for the middle school, you could expect once we get our norms down, myself or Ms. Gomez rolling them out, because this will be a school-wide every class will have a school-wide set of norms. That way, if you're in Mr. Ort's class, the rules aren't different in Mrs. Gomez's class. You know that in every classroom, this is what Avondale Middle School expects. One of the big things is for me is, I want the kids engaged. I want to see their eyes, and I don't want to see their eyes down, on another device. I want them engaged with our staff members. So you can rest assured that you will get that information from our administration directly. And we're trying to make this simple for the students and the parents. So there's not a lot of, well, what's the expectation here? What's the expectation here? Just like Ms. Brunei mentioned earlier about a uniformed Google Classroom.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ort. So technology question is if our family needs a device, what's the process?
So that's a good question. You can either email me or you can get in touch with your classroom teacher or your principal. So we'll have a letter that goes out that'll explain the process, and each building may be a little bit different depending on the setup, but it'll be very clear coming from your principal as to the communication line. If you communicate with me that you need a device, I'm going to make sure that it gets to the right place. If you have elementary, middle, or high school, I will make sure that your principals and your classroom teachers know. We will also work with our technology department to make sure that that happens for you. More communication will come out regarding that as we work with our technology department.
Yep, thank you. It says here, will assignments and general grades be posted on the parent portal, or will parents need to go into Google Classroom to monitor students' grades?
I can jump in if you'd like.
Yes, go ahead, because this has to do with...
So we are back to, I want to transition us from the spring where we were in a accommodated grading situation on many levels. We will be using our parent portal, or on the teacher side, Teacher Connect, as our grade book. And you'll see on the Google platform, the Google Classroom, there will be assignments, and that's our common platform. But as far as if you want to check on how your student is progressing from a grading point of view, it is the traditional parent portal, Student Connect, teacher grade book. And we will strive. This is a really good question because Mrs. Brunei, we need to make sure that we bring this into our communication plan, both for teachers and for staff. So whoever asked that, thank you so much.
In addition to that, for Google Classroom, parents can only come in as guardians, and they can't actually see any grades that are in there. You can, when you are added as a guardian, which the teachers need to add you in as. Once you are added as a guardian, you can get sent reports daily, and you can set it up yourself. You can get reports daily or weekly about missing assignments, but the grades you will not be able to see unless you log into MyStar in the parent portal.
All right, thank you. Regarding 504s, if a middle school had a 504 that's in effect the end of last year, will it carry over with them into this remote period?
Yes, it will. And if there is any question, if you'd like me to review that, we can touch base with the counselor. Though students that are making transitions that have unique or individual learning plans, I'm working really hard to review those in advance of the first day of school so that we can help, like our 5th to 6th graders or our 8th to 9th graders specifically, get to know a new support team. So yes, that is an active document. Remember, that's a federal document. We're going to support children with accommodations to make sure that the learning situation is a healthy learning situation for them.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson, this is a question for high school, and it's a freshman question, but I think it really applies to any high school student. Will there be will there be office hours that are published for counselors and teachers as questions come up about scheduling, et cetera? So will there be contact hours for staff available for parents?
Yeah, that's one piece that we'll be talking about that will not only be a part of our conversation on Monday with the schedule, because we've had staff members that have brought that up as well. Because one of the things that we did in the spring was we had like a full day where they were able to collaborate with each other and there were office hours. So we will be having those conversations in regards to the schedule. And for our staff, we will also have those conversations. The office hours will probably revolve around teachers' prep periods. Our counselors will maintain the same hours that they do as our teachers, so they will be able to be contacted between 7:22 and 2:22 on a daily basis. And most of our counselors are coming in on a semi-consistent basis next week, and then the following week they are in with all of our teachers.
Thank you. A freshman question relative to high school transitions, the course, high school transitions.
Yeah.
Is that still going to be taken during the COVID situation? And can a waiver be provided to take another substitute course?
The first answer is yes. It is happening. The second answer is no. We are not offering waivers for that. Every freshman is required to take that class, but especially during this time, our high school transition teachers got together last week and put together some really, really solid plans. We are looking at really being able to join our juniors and seniors with our freshmen to manage a lot of conversations that are going on in regards to what's happening currently in our society, as well as helping them to navigate the early time period of transitioning into high school. And so that time is really important, whether it's virtual or whether it's in person, to be able to offer those freshmen opportunities to meet with each other and meet others in our building and develop some community.
Thank you. Will the delivery of homework be similar to or be driven through the Google Classroom much as it was in the spring?
Yes, I would. And Jason, you can nod your head if I'm speaking out for you, but I mean, our platform that we have agreed upon, I think 2 through 12th grade, I think Seesaw is K through 1. Google Classroom is what we are using as our platform for content, skills, assignment delivery, and most of our teachers will be using Zoom as a platform to communicate with through visuals.
Thank you.
I got a thumbs up from Jason, so same thing.
Question about parent-teacher conferences. Do we know how parent-teacher conferences will be conducted?
So we have things like curriculum night coming up. We have registration that was supposed to happen this next week. Parent-teacher conferences are obviously coming up as well. And we are, as we get our staff together, we are looking for creative ways to do this. We know that getting in person is probably not going to happen with as many people as we want to have and we typically have in. So we are going to be partnering with the union to have conversations about what we can do within the contract, as well as how can we service all of the students and all the parents that we need to for parent-teacher conferences. But at least from the high school perspective, we do not have a specific plan. We are working on the first couple of weeks of school as we move into this. So plans will be coming out.
Yeah, to be developed. Yeah. Question about, is the district looking at how other districts in the area are managing their school years in the fall? And I can say yes, like I said, I'm in contact with the area superintendents a couple times a week with each one around us. So we closely compare notes, talk about strategies, talk about programming. So we're pretty close aligned with each other in communicating and identifying what each other is doing. Question about MHSAA sports. Right now we are, allowing for MHSAA sports. We're following their protocol. It's their purview. But we know that there's conversations being had within MHSAA that evolve on a daily basis. So we know competitions at this point in sports has been delayed. We know that on August 20th, MHSAA is supposed to release some more specificity as to what's going to be happening with sports this fall. There's been a lot of conjecture that many of the fall sports may move to spring, like football. When it comes to golf, tennis, cross country, those types of other fall sports, we don't know yet where MHSAA is going to land on those. Right now, we have MHSAA athletics happening in terms of conditioning. So we have students that are doing workouts and conditioning in preparation for, but where MHSAA is going to go relative to how they're scheduling sports and its related competitions, we don't know. We know that there's probably some influence, certainly by the closure of college sports that occurred over this past weekend with Big Ten sports and such. So we'll see where MHSAA lands. So we are tentatively following their plans as they go. So right now we're planning on moving forward, but we'll see where those guidelines evolve to as they go. How will we know which clubs and activities will be offered in the fall?
I can take that one if you'd like. So currently we, even in a traditional school year, we have our clubs, our extracurricular club applications for staff occur the week that staff come back. They apply for which clubs they'd like to sponsor, and then we begin to be able to advertise. So staff completed a survey regarding clubs and activities, and then those same type of application processes will happen those first days that staff are back, and then we'll be able to kick off clubs under safety protocols with the appropriate time. I know Mrs. Hyde, I think, had a timeline for elementary. I'm not sure if there was a timeline for secondary yet. But we do need the teachers to apply, and then we know who's sponsoring the clubs. So the first couple of weeks of school will be able to update people just like normal.
Thank you. Question about sports and numbers of people in practice, but not theater and robotics. So it says, why can sports have more than 10 people at a practice, but not theater and robotics? So sports are practicing in small groups, and they are socially distanced when they are not in their conditioning, and they are wearing masks when they're not in an exertion mode, but those groups are kept in small groups. Sports are not intermixing with each other. Theater and robotics are able to have practices, but they have to have practices in small groups. Again, right now, all athletics is outdoors. We have no indoor athletics that are allowed at this point. Robotics has small groups that are currently participating in groups of 10 or less. And I believe theater and band are also working with groups in, 10 students or less. So again, we're trying to abide by the executive orders and MHSAA guidelines and all that's out there for us to follow. So, there's distinct specific guidelines for how we do sports, and that's governed by MHSAA. MHSAA doesn't govern theater and robotics. That falls under executive orders by the governor. So, you may see some differentials between one or the other. That's because guidelines are different between one or the other that are established by different organizations. So we're trying to follow them all. And so you may see some differentials, but that's why. because there's often competing sets of guidelines that are coming from different places. And we know that when there's 166 and counting executive orders, and then you have MHSAA guidelines and everything else that we're obligated to adhere to, it can give the appearance that there's an inequity. But again, we're obligated to follow all of these orders. So that may make it look like why we are different from one aspect to another. Can you explain more about work and screen time? What we heard was that there will be a 40-60 split with 40% online and 60% independent work. Can you speak more about that?
So that would be the goal, given that we may fluctuate day to day a little bit, but the goal would be that there would be enough time for students to engage with the teacher in the class and do some FaceTime. And then also that independent work. In a typical class, there are mini lessons or sometimes even a longer lesson or remediation that it's done with a teacher. Sometimes small groups are pulled to the side in a face-to-face seated classroom, and that can still happen in the online format. So we want to give some flexibility there. So if I'm a student who may have received a mini lesson and that was my 30-40% for online live instruction that day, but I need some remediation from my teacher, we don't want to cap it. If that's the case, we want to make sure that the kids get what they need. But those are some general guidelines. We're still working on the schedule, and we don't want to tie teachers and administrators down to something that's not going to allow for our project-based instruction that we become accustomed to here at Avondale. It is our goal to create real life situations for learning for our students. So it is just a guideline for right now, like a rule of thumb, but as we create these schedules and we move into instruction, we're going to be making sure that we don't have too much screen time, but we also want to make sure that we give the kids what they need.
Thank you. We've got several questions on the theme of interventions and how will we be providing intervention supports to students that need them. So say students that were behind in reading last spring, will we have intervention supports to help catch them up? And what does that look like?
So I think I just described one situation where we may be able to do that more on a regular basis. If there are times in the schedule where there is some asynchronous learning going on, where students are doing independent work, we may have interventionists or even classroom teachers that are able to pull small groups and give kids, like what I said, what they need. We also have been, obviously we have summer school going on right now for targeted kids. We're gonna be looking at programs outside the school day. We've had an ESL program going on throughout the summer. We wanna make sure that we get services to our students who are learning English. All of these interventions can happen during the day, but we are also looking at outside the school day. Right now, our big focus is making sure we get these schedules in so that we can look for those opportunities to pull students into these smaller groups or one-on-one situations.
Thank you. Question about, will teachers be following their own individual schedules, or will they be following grade level schedules or some other type of schedule?
Well, we're going to follow a class schedule as if we were in a classroom. So we will have bell schedules where kids will transition from first hour to second hour to third hour in a normal fashion, even though it's going to be more like logging off and logging on or clicking in and clicking out. What happens in that classroom time, again, we're going to look for that 60 or that 40-60 balance, but It really depends. In a regular classroom, there are days where we're mid-project and we're working on that project and teacher is meeting with this group to see where they're at and then moving on to the next group. And that schedule may look very different than when we're introducing a concept. So tying teachers to a schedule that is minute by minute doesn't necessarily make sense for instruction, but we do want to look for that balance so that we're making sure that kids aren't online all day and that kids are getting the necessary interaction that they deserve.
Thank you. Question about school pictures. Will school pictures be able to happen this year?
Anyone want to answer? Or want me to take it?
I can tell you that we would just talk to LifeTouch. As of right now, that the middle school, we're going to postpone them. Yes, we're still going to take them. Being a father of 3, if my wife heard that we weren't taking school pictures, she'd trust me, you don't have to worry, parents. My wife's doing your job for you on that one. So yeah, we're going to probably push that back a little bit. I'm still undecided, but there's going to be a bunch of information sometime later next week, a lot of which we may have been answering in an uncertain way right now. But some of these logistical things we are in the midst of working out and finalizing. School pictures being one of them. I want to make sure that you have that opportunity to document that 6th, 7th, 8th grade year, and just like I do for my children. So I want you to know, yes, we're going to have them. They may get pushed back beyond September, but if we do that, it's strictly for keeping the kids safe. We have to make sure we can get those kids in the building. We have enough photographers to get in and get the kids through the building safely with the proper safety procedures.
For the high school, we will be doing pictures the week of September 14th. So we have 14th, 15th, and 16th that are scheduled. We will be doing them at our building. There'll be schedules that will come out. We'll do it alphabetical so that family members that have the last name that will have multiple family members will be able to come in. We'll maintain social distancing. Parents will not be allowed to come in order to maintain that social distancing. We've also been in contact with LifeTouch today, and they are getting our names and numbers, and they will be sending information out to our parents so that they will have all that information prior to those dates.
Thank you.
Dr. Shores, I would encourage families though, there has become this tradition that first day of school, you take that picture outside your front door with a little sign that says how old you are and what you want to be when you grow up. I would encourage families, take those photos, and Mrs. McAvoy will probably maybe she'll be doing a Facebook campaign. So teachers, staff, parents, first day of school, we want to see your photos. So post those on social media.
Next question is, will teachers be in the classrooms teaching, or will they be at home teaching? Do they have to physically report to their buildings? The answer to that is most teachers will be teaching from their classrooms. We will have some situations where they will be in their home. Teachers are going to be coming and going between their classroom and their home environment. But most of our teachers will be on site conducting lessons where they have their materials and their technology and everything here. So there will be a few instances, however, where they will be at home. So it depends on the teacher. I know most are excited to get back into their rooms and collaborate and be with their peers and teach from there. Others have extenuating circumstances where they're going to have to come and go, and we're allowing for that. But most will be in their rooms conducting their lessons. Question about, have we considered having elementary, middle, and high school all on the same schedule instead of 3 different school schedules now that we're not tied to transportation? And the answer to that is no. We are keeping the time periods the same as we would in the ordinary school setting. Some of that is contractual, whether you're an elementary teacher, middle school teacher, you're tied to a contractual school day. And so some of that is tied to that. Others is tied to specific minutes of the day. Could be with minutes as they're distributed and submitted to the state. We have to submit our calendar of minutes with our specific bookends of the day early on in the spring for the following year for the school year. And so those minutes were established and submitted to the state last spring, thinking we were going to be in session this fall, or hopeful that we were going to be in session this fall. So that doesn't allow us to really disrupt those schedules from a state reporting standpoint and also from a teacher contractual standpoint with minutes and how the day is structured. Do we have any classes or electives that are not being offered because of remote teaching?
Not that I can think of for the middle school, no.
Not at the high school.
So we're still able to offer the whole gambit of opportunities and course selections for students. That includes dual enrollment, correct?
Yes, unless you're making that change right now, Jim.
No, I'm not making it. And early college as well. So if you're an early college student, so if you attend Rochester College, you know, that as part of our early college program, that's all still intact. So we have been very
we're currently working, I mean, because we're doing a different schedule than we have in the past, we are working with them to whether it's working virtually and the programs are changing along the way, but we are in communication with them and working with them so that we can maintain those programs.
Yeah.
Mr. Wilson, what about OTEC?
So OTEC they've been tremendous. So if you have a kid that's going to OTEC, originally they were going to be 5 days face-to-face, and they were going to match up with whatever anybody's schedule was. So all Oakland County that was going to OTEC, they were matching up with everybody's schedule. So for us, they would have only been able to go every other day. And I was in communication with the head person over there, Paul. And he was like, yep, when they can come, send them over here and we'll work on things. And then we just literally got an email today that OTEC is going completely virtual. And so that information that came out today, now we're going to have to try to figure out what that looks like, because typically we provide transportation. So my assumption is that they are going to, they've reached out to all families, and since we're going virtual as well, we'll just continue that process. And instead of using Google Classroom with us, you'll use whatever platform that you're using with OTEC. So now, and then when we go back, or when the decision is made, when we go back, they have been tremendously helpful in working with whatever schedule is there. So OTEC will continue on, and we will continue that partnership.
Thank you.
Next question is, will teachers have daily office hours so parents can contact regarding help for students or questions regarding students?
As we work to refine the schedules, we're looking for space in the schedule to make sure that that is available. So it may not be daily, it could be a day, it could be embedded in some of the asynchronous time for class. We're still exploring that for secondary.
Questions for the high school. Mr. Wilson, will the leadership class continue to be able to meet, as well as class boards? Will they continue to be able to meet?
Yeah, actually, I think Katie's on here right now. Katie, do you want to talk about leadership? I know that you're hiding right now.
I'm here.
So Katie Osborne runs the leadership class, so she'll talk about it.
Well, I run it with Sammy Bolton,
You
who's
do a
not
she.
on here, but I've been talking to her.
Okay.
We have met with Leadership Kids once this summer, like we typically do, but we were outside and in pods and following the same protocols that our sports teams are following. They acknowledge that we have to change our events. They are open-minded to what that's going to be. But that's really all we got.
So to answer the question some more, yes, we are absolutely going to run it. And Katie has done a great job of asking anybody and everybody for ideas. I've been talking with our elementary principals. We've been talking to Jason at the middle school about how we can reach out and develop community in a virtual way and continue to grow that program and do things in a more creative way. So we are definitely still running it and are looking forward to how we can do some events as a school as we move on and we get better at navigating this virtual world.
Thank you. Question from a parent about what is the escalation path for parents to share concerns about the quality of their remote instruction that was discussed during the board meeting. So if there is a concern regarding the instruction that is occurring for your child, the chain of command maintains the same as you would as if it were in the classroom. That means if you have a concern, you first start with the teacher and you try to work out those concerns with the teacher. If all of the issues, then you go to the building administrator. The building administrator would then intervene and assist in that situation. If at that point you don't find success or resolution, then you jump to central office. So there's a definite chain of how you work to resolve concerns, and it's no different than it would be if you were in the classroom. So if you're experiencing a concern, you start with the classroom teacher first to remedy those concerns and move up from there. We'll take those concerns very seriously. We all do. The teachers do, and we try to work, through those concerns. We would ask that if there are concerns, that you don't necessarily procrastinate and let it get infectious, but you say something. You take action to make those concerns known earlier than later. So, but in terms of voicing those concerns, it's the same as it was in the classroom. Being remote is no different. So, it says, which version of Google Suite for education is being used by Avondale? I believe it's Enterprise. It's free or Enterprise. I think we're using the Enterprise.
I'll answer that question for you. It's the free version of education. So it's the educational version of Google, but it's the free version.
Will there be more G Suite for education applications used during the school year? That being calendaring, voicing, video conferencing.
So as our teachers get more and more comfortable with the G Suite, they have, Colleen has done a great job of helping us to become a sketchy district. And there are lots of professional development opportunities for our teachers to become more proficient in G Suite. And so as they look for extensions and apps that go along with the G Suite, our teachers will continue to grow their capacity and use more and more of those tools to help engage the students.
Okay, thank you. Questions about what other types of communication tools beyond email is there to engage students?
Again, so I would say that Colleen has put together, Colleen and Kristen and Sarah and Marianne have all put together great resources that we will start to make available to our teachers. We've already prepped a lot of our teachers last week when we've had staff meetings to say, hey, look, go out, find out, mess around with Google, mess around with some other software tools that allow you to kind of test out the water and bring kids in and engage them, whether it's whiteboards, whether it's interactive labs. And so our teachers are starting to work on developing those tools. A lot of those toolkits and a lot of those resources are actually found on our staff landing page that Colleen and Marianne and Kristen and Sarah have put together. So we are constantly updating that. We are constantly having teachers that are pushing great tools that are coming towards us. And as we go into our professional developments throughout the year, we are asking our teachers to share those ideas and share their capacity with our other teachers.
So will teachers be required to create content in the native G Suite format as opposed to other types of documents such as Microsoft Word?
Well, since most of our technology pieces are Chromebooks, the answer to that would be yes. I mean, they're not going to have. There are some classes that are at the high school, for example, that are going to be directed towards using Microsoft tools, but in the Google environment that we are as Avondale schools, the majority of that will be using the G Suite unless the class is specifically designed to use another tool.
Will the children be required to enable video during online meetings?
Yes.
And why?
So that we can count them as attendance. And more importantly, because face-to-face matters, our relationships, our ability to see them, for us to be able to read their engagement level, for us to know that they are engaged with us. That is truly why we are looking for face-to-face. It's the same reason why whenever we do our subcommittee meetings or any meetings we're looking for, or some of the norms that we set are, you need to have your camera on if possible so that we can read what's happening and how you're doing. So it plays into the social emotional piece, it plays into the academic piece, it plays into the importance of connection in the virtual world. Whereas if all we stare at the black screen of death or a name, we don't get to make that connection.
I would like to add, though, that there are certain accommodations that are appropriate for learners based on not just social emotional, but also environmental factors. So every student will be encouraged to be able to engage, but I also want to acknowledge and name that we do all have different strengths and areas to grow. And if we need to accommodate a student regarding camera, really I want to just reach out and say, like, we'll have supports in place. And it's about communication. We do want to encourage that engagement. We want to be able to see students and connect with them because we miss them, but we know that there are other factors that contribute to that live video option sometimes. So home is different than the classroom, right? And what's behind us at home can sometimes be different as well. So I want to let you know that there are accommodations for students too.
Thank you. Question about middle school, Mr. Ort. So will middle school band be in the schedule?
As we had mentioned before, all electives will be our go. And we are going to do our best to make sure that students are engaged. And tomorrow I am meeting with the band teacher to go over the how and how we're going to make this happen. And, there's more to come. I can't get into particulars now, but there's no doubt that is going to be a part of the curriculum, and no extracurriculars, band, choir included, are going to be excluded from our schedule.
I see Miss Pett smiling and putting her thumbs up. Do you guys see that?
So then information regarding purchase and rentals and all of that stuff will be forthcoming.
That's some of the discussion that we're going to be having. Again, this is we're, as Dr. Schwartz says, we're trying to get all this information out. I just want to be accurate with the information as we're giving it out. I have teachers left and right talking about, we need to give them novels. We need to, how are we going to do instrument handout? So there are lots of things that are yet to come. These town halls are not the end of the information chain. They're just the beginning.
Thank you. Another middle school question about the Washington, D.C. trip. So the Washington, D.C. trip has been moved to June for 8th graders,
Correct.
but folks need to make a decision by September 11th whether they're going or they're apparently not getting their deposits back.
That's not, so that piece is not accurate.
Oh,
Can
good.
I clarify
Okay.
for you?
Yep, go ahead.
So we renegotiated our Washington DC trip. That's an annual tradition. We wanted to try to see if we could still capture that for our 8th grade students, but we knew that the traditional time of late October, early November was not appropriate. So back in March, we worked with the tour company. We've got a new tour company who is absolutely outstanding from a customer service point of view. They reset and we've sent this out probably a lot over the summer. So if I know I'm repeating myself, but to clarify, they reset the deadline to apply to go, to sign up to go. As long as you have included insurance in your registration, you will be able to get a refund within a certain timeline. Right now, because of the extension of remote learning, we're trying to gauge and figure out which families are deciding whether or not they want to keep their registration. Some families, I think there were 3 or 4, have chosen that they're not going to go in June no matter what. But that September date is the last possible time that we're able to make any adjustments for transportation reservations for buses to get us to DC. So I've asked the Washington DC trip coordinators to please assess the insurance policy and give us an update sometime within the next week so that we can update families on any other extensions or insurance items that they can apply for. So as long as you've clicked the insurance piece, you have until that last time to get a full refund.
Very good. Thank you. Appreciate that update. We're getting to the end of our questions. We just got a couple more here to go that we've gotten that have been submitted. In the board meeting, it was stated that Avondale is using Google Classroom as its main online platform. How is that going to be syncing with MyStar? Because apparently in the spring there were differences between Google and MyStar when assignments were assigned. There were confusions and things were marked as missing, and there was some differences in terms of those two programs being able to sync. So have those issues between Google Classroom and MyStar been rectified?
So from a middle school point of view, MyStar, there were no updates for K through 8 because we were looking at credit with no academic harm up through 8th grade. So Google Classroom was a tracking system up through 8th grade for participation and feedback, so students knew how they were doing and teachers could adjust their instruction. So there weren't any MyStar updates after that March 13th. I can't speak to the high school ones on MyStar and Google don't talk to each other.
Correct.
But the teacher maintains the grade book in MyStar, and I would encourage, if there's questions about that, make your teacher your first point of contact. And sometimes, I always told teachers the best time, make sure your grade books are always updated by Monday morning so that we can go into a week with accurate data and parents can work with their children all the way through the weekend to make sure that things are completed on time.
Yeah, I would say that for our teachers, when they were updating things in Google Classroom, there was no direct sync to MyStar. So I know that a lot of the teachers at the high school and through our district were working all hours of the day, documenting and tracking all of that information through Google Classroom. I know that several of our teachers would wait a week or so before they started inputting the updated grades into MyStar. And Whereas prior to that, every time that they collected something, it almost automatically went into MyStar. So there was a shift of what was going on because our centralized platform was Google Classroom, and that's where all the information was coming from. And that's where all the assignments were stored, and that's where all the feedback was coming from. So there was a lag time, and that is something that we are working on how to navigate that into as we move into the fall. So that it's constantly updated, but it's not overwhelming the teachers to try to keep track of two different grading platforms for our kids.
Thank you. Question about grading. How will grading be handled in the remote learning format? Will there be a credit option, or is it all grades?
This should be thought of as a regular classroom. We're just delivering it through remote capabilities. So assignments, projects, attendance, all of that should be as usual, so that when we go back into the classrooms in person, there is no transition when it comes to philosophy or policy around grades and attendance.
All right, thank you. And this is what I believe to be our last question that's been submitted is what savings will there be to the district by going to remote learning? Will there be less supplies, less facility maintenance, less teachers, staff? And frankly, going remote, I mean, we haven't calculated it, but we don't believe it's going to save the district much money. I mean, we're still maintaining full staff, in terms of our teachers. Support staff is going to be assisting with interventions with students online, just as they do in the classroom. So frankly, the roles and responsibilities of people in the buildings in terms of teachers and support staff isn't, it's only changing to go remote. So you're still getting services provided. What was in classroom, now it's remote. There might be some instances where some folks are going to be rescheduled from their current situation to go to work, say, in childcare, because we know we have to expand childcare to accommodate all the families that are requesting and needing that. So there may be some rescheduling of people into new roles, but do we anticipate that there's going to be sharp decreases of staffing? We don't, because we're still here to provide a service for students. We're just providing it remotely. Same thing with special education servicing, which is the bulk of most of our support staff. They're going to be busy in that remote realm. So we don't see where there's going to be much of a cost savings there. Facility maintenance and cleaning. You heard Mr. Trudell earlier. There's really not going to be cutbacks in cleaning. In fact, we're upping the sanitization schedules and the amount of cleanliness that we're reaching toward, in our buildings. That's not changing. When we talk about bus drivers, and okay, well, you don't need as many bus drivers. So in all likelihood, bus drivers are going to be scheduled to other types of duties where they're assisting, in childcare or other places where we have to expand to accommodate our community's needs. Supplies, we're going to be preparing supplies, for students that need them. We're actually purchasing more because we're trying to up our arsenal of computers to accommodate families that need technology. So we're actually spending more to accommodate the needs of our families in a remote situation. We're continuing to buy devices as much as we can because we eventually want to get to a one-to-one device per child so that we can easily flex in and out of remote when we need to, depending on how the governor configures our phases, makes decisions on those. So so we're actually spending more money on supplies, technology, than we have historically. So, do I sense we're really going to be saving money in these 10 weeks? I really don't. We have a lot of expenditures going out there in preparation for remote. Computers are as necessary these days as pencils used to be. So And those cost a lot more than pencils. So we're spending more. And I believe that is that the end of our questions. That's all that's been submitted. All right, so that looks to be the end of our questions. And I do want to thank everyone for their participation and for sending in their questions. I mean, these only help us. They help us to further granularize our details to our preparation. They help us to think of things that maybe we haven't thought of, because in these situations, there's literally thousands of details that we have to balance, make decisions on, look for new solutions toward. And so having these types of meetings, forums where we have this dialogue between community and us with questions really helps us to further plan. As we move forward, we're going to be, the subcommittees are going to continue to chew on these questions and provide more details. As I mentioned earlier, there will be continued updates between now and the start of school that will provide more detail as those committees make decisions. And those will be communicated to you either via our central office communications as well as our school level communications. There'll be town halls, coffees, and such by administrators as decisions are made. We also have paper communications and newsletters that will be going out, so please take a look for those. And then, as I said earlier, look on our website on the Return to Learn icon, because we continually put our updates in that dashboard. So that is a vital tool, piece of information for you to go and get vital information as we start. So again, we want to we appreciate all of your participation in helping us to move forward and solve all of these questions as a community. And these are difficult times, and there's no recipe card in navigating these times. And we know there's opinions on all extremes, from masks to instruction, whether it's in seat, remote. And we know at the end of the day, we're not going to make everybody happy no matter what decisions we make, because there are very polarizing opinions on all sides. But we have to work together to overcome the barriers and the obstacles that we have and problem solve so that we can create the best educational opportunity that we can for our students under the current circumstances that we're in. None of us wanted this COVID. This was on none of our plates or our agendas or things we even thought about, 7-8 months ago. But it is now our reality, and it's our reality to solve as a community. And we've done very well with doing that, and we will continue to do that. So we appreciate your voices. We appreciate your questions. And our hope is that we reach that point where we are back in session and we are back to what is normal soon. That's what we all want. We all want to be back in our normalcy, in our seats with kids in school with quote unquote normalized instruction. And we hope that gets there sooner than later. So again, your efforts certainly will help us to pave the way in getting there. So with that, I appreciate everybody's participation tonight. Please look forward to more information that is coming. And at this point, I think we will sign off. So please don't hesitate to continue to ask questions, and we will work to get you those answers. All right. So with that, we will go ahead and we will adjourn the seminar this evening. So thank you so much, everybody, for your participation.